All right. Hello and welcome to all of you. I'm Pastor Kathy, and we are here in this virtual world of connections with Pastor Kevin and Pastor Dan, and just wanting to connect with all of you in another format in some way in this thing that we're calling Coffee with the Pastors. And so I thought I would start out with just a little bit of history with all of this, because I was thinking about this. It is probably about 45 years ago that Pastor Merle Sievertson, after the retirement of Pastor Laverne Hansen, thought that it would be a great opportunity for people at Trinity to get a chance to casually sit with the pastors and just get to know them a little bit. And so it morphed into this thing called Coffee with the Pastors that he and Harriet Petkoff started up that many years ago. And somewhere along the line, the name changed to Fellowship Coffee, but it's something that we've been doing for that many years at Trinity, and just being a gathering to get to know one another on the third Tuesday of every month. And in my years at Trinity, it's kind of been this place where we not only get to know the pastor, and we one of the members come and tell highlights of their life story. So, and I'm so sad that we can't do that, because we had a great lineup of 2020 speakers for Fellowship Coffee, and hopefully we'll be doing that all in the future sometime. They've agreed to come back and do it, but I thought maybe it'd be fun for us to go back to the very foundations of this thing called Coffee with the Pastors. And so here we are. I have my coffee. Hope you have your coffee. Oh, look at all the coffee. Yay, yay. Oh, and so we thought we'd just spend some time with you sharing about what's going on with us, and as well as what I like to say about Fellowship Coffee is it's a place where you get the inside scoop on what's going on in the church, and with some conversation with the pastors just kind of talking about that stuff. So here we go. And so grab your cup of coffee if you're joining us, whatever time, and let's just check in with one another. So, you know, in my screen, Kevin, you're right over there next to me. So there you are. You want to tell us about how you're doing, and maybe even share with the group, like, what does a day in the life of a Trinity pastor look like during COVID-19?
Yeah, sure. How am I doing? Pretty good. I would think it depends on the day, as Amy would let you know. Probably about every 2 to 3 weeks, I have just like a low dip and struggle through a day or two and come out on the other side. It's okay, and just that's been part of the pattern I've found. And what does the day look like? Depends entirely on the day. Kind of the same as it was when I was working, you know, when we were in the office at the building. Each day was a little bit different depending on what programs and different things I was getting ready for or participating in. And so the same is true, I think. Most every day for me starts with, you know, breakfast, and then a time of devotional reading and prayer. And then I usually try to get in a walk early in the morning. And then it's emails, sitting in a chair, doing computer stuff. Mondays are looking towards the next Sunday and our live stream worship and getting ready for that, making phone calls. Tuesdays, I'm on Zoom meetings. Sometimes, like yesterday, I had 5 Zoom meetings. My longest Zoom meeting was a 12-hour Zoom meeting one day. So I get a lot of computer time with people. Wednesdays are again kind of just a prep for worship, doing some things for the technical side of our live streaming worship, as well as getting in touch with people, making contact with staff, and just kind of trying to keep communication going. Thursdays are my day off. So a lot of people have seen me up at the church in the courtyard carving on some baptismal font for our outdoor worship, and that has been my kind of mental health time to get there and just work on that and kind of put other stuff behind. And then Fridays is, again, taking care of some technical things to get ready for worship. Fridays is usually when I start thinking about where does Lena go in worship and how are we going to dress her, what's fun and different this time. And then Saturdays, depending on if I'm preaching or not, it's again getting ready for that, or I try to get over and work on the font some more. So Sundays, live stream worship. So a lot like what it was before, with Lena involved now.
Well, now you did the big reveal of who is a pastor is really responsible for Lena every week. Yeah. Oh, that is great. Yeah. Oh, all right, Pastor Dan, you want to tell us about you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. It's getting old. I think like a lot of us, I'm tired of the adaptations that we've had to make to work from home, to do church from a distance, and those kind of things. But most days are pretty good. Most days actually go pretty quickly for me, I'm finding. When this all started, I did not expect that to be the case. I really thought not being able to be in the office, not being able to see the staff, to see people coming through the building, that was going to make the days really slow down, but it hasn't. For me, yeah, like Kevin, a lot of things are pretty similar in terms of what I do. It's a lot of time spent in the office, a lot of time in communication with people by email or by phone, a lot of writing and doing those kind of things for communications and for worship and for different boards that I serve on. I'm still in a ton of meetings like I was before all of this. It's just now being done over Zoom instead of in person, which actually has its advantages. It takes a little bit less time when you just sit down in your home office instead of driving across town or wherever. So, but yeah, I think yeah, doing pretty well all in all. I'm so grateful for just the ways that our staff has been able to adapt and change. It's not been easy, particularly since we did this all in about 5 or 6 days. We had to really start to transition just about everything in less than a week. And our team has done an amazing job. Our leaders in the congregation have been phenomenal at adapting and creating documents to help us navigate the future. And those are all things that I've been spending a lot of time on in the last month. But it changes like ministry does. Different seasons come and go, and I know the next couple of months will look a little bit different than these last couple have. But my days have been full. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think days are full. I think about it and thought, oh my goodness, what is this going to be like when it first started? And I was, trying to really, pack in the days, and then yeah, so much screen time. So I was working and saying, okay, these are my work days, these are my days off, and doing that. It's turned out to be a lot more fluid for me. I think in the long term that I feel like I'm pacing myself better. I'm doing some reading. I'm doing some writing, not just for church, but just kind of reflecting on some stuff. Some of the things that I wish that I would have time to do sometimes and then don't, because I think I would be a better pastor if I did them. And so I've added those things in, as well as, yeah, all of these meetings on Zoom, do a lot of phone calling. It's been kind of fun to kind of, it's like always when I'm sitting in my office in church, I think somebody pops into my mind and I think, oh, I wonder how they're doing. And then I go off and keep doing whatever I'm doing. And this time it's like somebody pops into my head. I think, oh, maybe I'll give them a call. That's been really fun to just kind of connect with random people during this time and do that. So that's good. I think I was telling you a couple of weeks ago, I was working in the morning, and then I thought, you know what? I think I'll just go clean that one cupboard. And I felt really guilty about going during my work morning to clean the cupboard. And then I came back and I went back to work and I thought, oh, well, that was just when I was standing at the desk talking to Luann or Jane if I'd been in the office, because, so in some ways this is more efficient time because there aren't the interruptions. There's not the, hanging out in the workroom and talking about whatever. I miss that. But, when I'm working, I'm pretty much by myself working. So has its advantages and its disadvantages. So
I feel like some of those conversations have been replaced by conversations with my family, which is not all bad. Now instead of bopping, into the workroom to grab a snack or to chat with somebody, I go downstairs and Maggie's cooking in the kitchen. In fact, she baked some donuts from scratch last night. So I've got donuts with my coffee.
Thanks for sharing.
So I'm going to probably gain weight in all of this is really what I'm saying.
Well, that's a whole nother story about how easy it is to walk to the fridge, but
struggle is real.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, I think, the agreement is that we're making the best of it and working every day from home, but miss going into the church. So, and of course, the church is looking differently all the time. So, talking about inside scoop here, maybe Dan, do you want to give us a little bit about the construction update and what's happening there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so one of the interesting things that's gone on these last couple of months is that construction hasn't stopped. And in some ways, it's gotten easier than ever because up until the pandemic, the construction folks have had to work around us and around a very busy church schedule. And suddenly now there's not anything happening in the building and they've been able to really dig in and go after it. We're going to be pretty well done with construction by the end of this month, which is almost unbelievable to be able to say after almost 2 years, it feels like, of doing this. So I was over at the church yesterday and I grabbed a couple of pictures of a few of the newest additions and last pieces get finished. And if I can throw these up on the screen here, I'll share a few of them.
There you go, just showing off your tech skills.
Well, I can't do the cool background. My computer won't do the cool background updates that you guys often have. So, I got to have something. The thing that's probably changed the most, and if you've driven around the building, you've seen this in the last week or two, is that the gathering space windows and ephes are being finished off this week. So you can start to get a sense of what that space is going to look like from the outside. It is glass from floor to ceiling on almost 3 sides of that room, which is really amazing to both look at from the outside and also to look at from the inside. So you can see here a little bit how it sits in relation to the rest of the courtyard. It's jetting out about 12, 14 feet or so from where the old wall was. So not a huge intrusion. It still leaves us plenty of room in the courtyard, but is a really cool feature, I think, both for outdoor worship and for indoor gathering. This is what it looks like on the inside.
It's still, that's what I really want to see inside.
Yeah. It's still missing the drop ceiling that's going to go in. There's going to be kind of a cool cloud drop ceiling that'll run across in different segments. And the flooring obviously still needs to go in, but you can get a sense of what it looks like looking out. You can see the outdoor worship center in the background. Straight through that doorway is where the welcome desk used to sit. So there's like a little doorway there now off of when you come in off that northwest entrance. This is looking from the windows back toward the sanctuary part of the building. So you can see the old coat areas. Those will still be coat areas. They're right off of that new gathering space. So that part has remained. There's a shot of the windows.
I imagine our offices used to be sitting there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's we're probably looking at Pam's office and Luann's office.
Yeah.
Workroom.
The workroom, yep. And then this is looking back toward the east. So you can kind of get a sense of how you'll come in those new doors off the east parking lot, and it'll be a a smaller space there walking in that a lot of us have seen here for the last few months, and then it opens up into this bigger space.
You can see where the old hallway was right there.
Yeah.
That kind of light line. That's all the wider the hallway used to be.
Yeah, it's so
Oh.
crazy now to look at that and to realize how narrow that is compared to the new space. It really, yeah, that's a great point, Kevin. And here's that view looking in from just inside the east doors off the parking lot toward the new gathering space. We've got some stuff in the way right now because of construction and because of some other work that's going on in the building, but that'll be a clear path when we're done here.
Sure. Yeah.
Had to take a shot of one of the new bathrooms that's right there off of that entryway between kind of the gathering space and the new east entrance. These are the lights that are hanging just inside those doors off of the east parking lot. It's actually 3 stories open when you walk in the first set of glass doors. And then there's another set of glass doors before you go into the space just outside of Luann's, the main offices. But those lights are really cool. So I thought I'd put that in. And a couple other spaces that are new and that I'm guessing that most folks haven't had a chance to see. This is the new nursery that sits right outside, or actually right between the sanctuary and the second floor of the education wing. If you see that door back in the left corner there, that's the door into the sanctuary. The new door
so
that's
cool. Yeah.
where the window used to be.
What great placement. Isn't that nice? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's going to be really cool to walk by and see the little ones in there. And so we're still furnishing this and getting moved in, but it's a few items that are starting to find their way into the nursery. Directly above that nursery room is what we're kind of calling an art room right now. It's got some hard flooring in it so that we can do things that might be a little messy in there without messing up carpet. And art is certainly a big part of our Sunday school rotation. It's a big part of our faith and wellness outreach programming and plans. And so this is a really cool room in terms of views. You can see out the windows there. The roof of the new gathering space is what we're looking at right there, in the post office there in the distance. And you can see how the old brick walls of the church have been maintained and left. So they've been left exposed. That's a really cool feature of a lot of the new construction.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great room. Wow.
And this is the view out that window looking down onto the courtyard. You get a kind of a sense of how the new gathering space fits into the existing building.
Yeah.
And then last of all, this is that 3rd story room that's directly above the new east entrance, the one that we didn't plan on having originally, but needed to add because of some fire code requirements. And so this is, some people are calling it the upper room. I don't know if it really has a name yet, but this is the room that we're going to leave unfinished until we hit that 3.5 million mark on the appeal. We're just under.
Isn't that the senior pastor's office now? I thought that's
Oh,
where
I wish. Yeah, I wish. It's an incredible room with views that look out 3 different directions. This is the view out to the east, right out into the parking lot. But it's got drywall, but it's going to be left like this until we get just a little bit further along. We did that in order to keep our total project costs under control. And right now we're sitting at about 3.17, so a little under 3.2 million committed out of the 4. You know, we had hoped to be at 3.5 by the time we got to this point of the year, but that was before the pandemic and everything hit. But all in all, we're feeling pretty good about where we're at with the appeal. We're going to continue to work at it as we're able in these really unique times. But this room will stay as it is until we get to that marker, and then we'll finish it off, and it can be used for all kinds of different things. There's actually, the elevator is just out that door to the left there, so it's very easy to access from just inside the door. So those are a couple of pictures from around the building. Hopefully give people a sense of what it's looking like. But again, I think we could be pretty well done by the end of the month. We'll, you know, with construction, we always see how that goes, but it's getting very close at this point.
That's so cool to see.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. That was really fun. Yeah. Well, and also good to know, that we're making some progress still with the campaign and finances. I think that's a worry in this time, but people are good. People are generous.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
people have
Yeah.
been incredibly generous. It's been a huge blessing for us
Yeah.
during this time. Huge.
Huh. Well, that was a bit about the building. So now we've got people stuff going on as well that are changing. And you want to talk a little bit about that for us, Kevin?
Yeah, sure. As you might remember, in March, Marcy announced to the congregation that she was going to be retiring in July. And then about a week later, all of the COVID stuff hit and we were closing down, and I think that announcement got overshadowed. And a lot of the kind of last things that Marcy was looking forward to with the youth just have not happened in the same way, but she's been so good about finding some new ways to be with the kids. And this last week, got out to see every one of the seniors from Trinity and to give them a prayer shawl. And we were able to bless them during worship and just remember and celebrate with them. So she's been continuing to do that work and be out with the kids as much as possible. And yet, when in March, when she said she was retiring, July seemed like a long ways away. It is not a long ways away. And it's changed some of the ways that we're going to be celebrating her ministry. I think, just to realize that she's been doing this for 21 years. Whenever I say that to anybody who's done church work or youth work before, they all choke, because just that longevity in youth work is unheard of. And she has been so good at it and so caring for literally generations of youth, where, we've got kids in confirmation now who are the children of the youth she worked with early on. And it's a neat thing to have kind of that 2-generation presence, and it's just been wonderful. And I think about all the trips she's done, all the urban immersions she's taken kids on, service trips, the national youth gatherings, the high adventure trips over the years. I think about all of the baptismal quilts that she has had the youth and quilters work in partnership to. I think she said they're up over 600 children they've given these quilts to, which is just unbelievable. When I think about every confirmation student who's ever done their 20 worship notes required every year, and how she reads through every one of those worship notes, the lunch duty at the high school, she has cared for our youth in so many just wonderfully touching ways, that we're really trying to think about how to thank her, to celebrate that ministry, to bless her in this next venture in life. So we're going to be doing some things. Her day is July 26th, and we're going to do some recognition in worship, whether that's, it will be on the live stream, but whether or not we'll be outdoors worshiping by that time or not, we'll have to wait and see. But if we are, we'll do some recognition there in worship as well. Unfortunately, because of our phase in, we won't be able to celebrate with like cake and coffee or any kind of food, but we want to do some kind of program and celebration. So what we've been talking about is putting together a virtual program, a video program that we could premiere like right after worship on a Sunday morning, that would have guest speakers, that would have Marcy giving a chance to say some words and talk about her look at youth ministry and her career, some photos, some memories, kind of a thing, just like we would if we were to go down into the fellowship hall after worship and have a big kind of celebration for a person's ministry and retirement. So we'll try to do that in a virtual way. We also want to do a card shower for her. The Youth and Family Committee is asking members of the congregation to send a card to the church office and just mark it, attention Marcy, and we're going to collect all those and present them to her probably on the 26th. But a card with just a memory, a word of thanks for her ministry, but especially if you could share a memory that, sticks out to you, whether it was from you personally or your kids or grandkids, or even if it was just, being at one of the Easter vigils or Easter sunrise services that she worked with the youth so hard on, whatever it is, if it's just the way she walks through the church hugging people, and you look forward to that. Just write that in a card and send it into the church. And we're going to try to get that news out to as many people and former youth and families even that aren't still connected to Trinity, and hopefully get those in so we can present them to her and just celebrate with her for that. It's a like I said, it's a unbelievable ministry that she's done, and we just want to celebrate her and bless her as she moves into retirement. As far as replacing her, there really probably is no replacing Marcy. But we will be putting together a search team. We're actually in the midst of putting that together right now to kind of look at the whole job description to see where we might want to change and think about where that youth program is heading in the years ahead. And while we do that, we'll probably have an interim time, just like we did with our music director when Kim Reisinger retired. We had this interim time where we bring in some people who have gifts to help out in specific areas, not just do the whole youth program, but to kind of break that up into smaller pieces to make sure that all of those things are covered while we do this search and this thinking about what the future holds, and look forward to hiring somebody and bringing them on staff later in the fall or as soon as we can. So that's kind of where we stand right now. A lot to do, and it's been a little bit hard doing it and getting it going with not being able to meet and talk and get feedback from families and youth. And but we'll be trying to figure out some ways to do that.
One of the amazing things that I think when I think about Marcy too, like she has been at it so long that she's become a mentor to other youth directors too, which is such a unique, like you said, it's just so rare that somebody's been it that long and so effective. It's pretty cool. It was well said.
Yeah. I mean, she has had such a wonderful ministry and through the years, and we've been so fortunate to have long-term people that have just brought such stability in ministry. So yeah, a lot going on with youth and family and all means. So, and July 26th, I mean, that's her last day. It's also an interesting day for me because I'm going to be starting my sabbatical on July 26th. And, that's been such a strange thing to figure out because, what I thought I was going to do, at the beginning of the year for sabbatical, I had it all planned out for that date. And then all of this happened. And then I thought, well, when do I do sabbatical? How do I do sabbatical? What's that going to look like? So, but I'm still planning on doing it I'm going to take the week before that for some family vacation. Hopefully, maybe even see that grandbaby that is now over a year old, and then start my sabbatical on July 26th. But of course, that too has changed because what I had originally planned on doing was getting ready for a trip to Greece and Turkey, and it just doesn't seem like that's probably going to be happening. And so lots of things have changed that way. I'm shaping up a plan this week about what that's going to look like. But, I'm also just going to have to teach myself how to become a digital world person here. Which I'm finding just frustrates. See, look at that. He just changes his background just like that. How did he do that? I don't know.
I'm looking forward to you to being the technology pastor when you get back from sabbatical, because it's all yours.
That'd be great.
Oh, yeah. I keep telling Pastor Dan and Pastor Kevin, I said, well, I'm going to be the tech pastor. I'm going to spend 2 whole months learning how to do this, because right now it's like I sit down to do that one simple little thing and it takes me hours to figure out the simplest little thing, and I think, oh, I cannot waste my time, doing church stuff now trying to figure this out, because it's just beyond me. So
Become
anyway.
a part of our church stuff though, right? I mean, that's the thing, is for us to do ministry. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I was working on my sabbatical plan this week, and I looked back at my sabbatical 2011. And actually, there is a whole section about it in terms of exploring social media for older adults and connections, blogging and Facebook and all of that. And I'm going, I mean, God has a sense of humor, because, I mean, way back then, 9 years ago, I thought, this, I think, is the future of senior adult ministry, doing that. And I remember vividly spending a lot of time during my sabbatical researching it, talking to people, looking at it. And then I came back from sabbatical and went, one, oh man, that's too hard. Two, oh, it just can't be. There's too many mediums out there. I don't know which one to choose, because we didn't even have a Facebook page for the church at that time. And so it's like, oh, I don't know that could be it, And now here we are, 9 years later. I could have been the social media guru if I'd just been spending 9 years doing it. But anyway, so yeah, I'm taking my sabbatical and I'm looking at all of those kinds of new ways of doing church. Sabbatical's always been a time for rest, but more particularly for grief, because I think as a pastor to senior adults, I need to be really intentional about grieving losses, not only the people that have died, but I'm just thinking about the aging of some of the pillars of the church that I counted on to be volunteers when I started, and now are in care centers or needing care themselves. So there's that whole grief, along with, I think, quite honestly, the grief of church and how we knew it and how we connected with one another. And so I really don't know what all that means, other than I feel like I'm so blessed because Trinity has a sabbatical policy, and that I can take a couple of months and really sit with all of that and think about it and what does it mean, and then do what sabbaticals are best for, come back with some renewed energy and some renewed sense of purpose as to what that might look like. So anyway, that's happening for me. So who knows whether, I'll be able to see people face to face, or whether I'll just be hoping when I get back from sabbatical that I'll be able to see people face to face sometime mid-September, in time for the building dedication. So
Right.
yeah.
And I'm so glad you're getting that time. I think that's so crucial. And like you said, such a gift to all of us to be able to have that time. But I'm so glad in the midst of all of this unique strangeness that you're still able to get it, Kathy. I think that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, you would think, that I'd had plenty of time to rest and relax during this COVID-19 stuff, but it's like, it's more emotionally tiring and more physically tiring. I don't know. I mean, somebody says Zoom meetings are, 5 times more tiring than person meetings, and I think there is some truth to that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so that's a little bit about me and a little inside scoop, if you will. But, probably what everybody's really wanting to know, Pastor Dan, is when are we going to be able to get into that building? So any updates about the TAS and want to talk more about that?
Yeah, no, I think that is the question that a lot of us are really thinking about, is when are we going to be able to get back in person on campus at Trinity? We know that the ministry continues to go on. In some ways, it's grown and become stronger for the future through this, ironically. But we all long, I think, for that physical proximity and connection with people that is so much a part of a community church. So yeah, I'd love to just take a moment to talk a little bit about the document the council put together, really to help guide their decision making as we go through this time. You know, there's so much different information, and people are in such different places about their comfort level of doing different activities. And churches, I think, are particularly unique because we do some things in our daily life that are not as safe maybe as some other things when it comes to a pandemic and a respiratory disease like this. We have to be really thoughtful in thinking about how we come back together, even though we all long to do that. And I was really pleased with what the council approved in order to kind of navigate through this. So I want to just touch base on a couple things out of that document, knowing that one, our reopening plan, the Trinity Adapting Serving, the TAS, as we call it for short, it's long. It's 9 pages, and it's pretty detailed. And I know that for a lot of folks, that's just too much. So if I could, I'm just going to go through the 5 basic steps that are laid out in that. The first step is safer at home, and that's the stage that we went into in March when we closed our building. That the very beginning of the week coming off of spring break, we closed everything down, and we went to fully virtual and radio worship. And at that point, we went into safer at home, really closing down the building, other than a couple of folks rotating through to be in the office during office hours, staff coming in just for essential kind of work to do worship, and if there were other things they had to do in the office, but really encouraging everyone to stay home and to stay distanced. Construction has continued, as we said, in this time, but really they're about the only folks that have been in the building since we landed in this. The first phase moving out of safer at home is what we're calling phase 1. And this is a phase that we actually were able to move into just in the last couple of days because, as that document says, we saw in the trends of new infections an overall decline. It wasn't a steep decline, but it was enough of a decline over 14 days, as the document says, that we could consider moving into phase 1. So after we saw those trends, the council met via Zoom, and they moved us into what is phase 1 in that document, which means that we can do funerals, weddings, and baptisms for 10 or less people inside the building. We've been doing funerals and weddings, one wedding outside. We've been doing graveside services for funerals outside, but we now can do them in the building with 10 or less people, and a number of distancing and sanitation restrictions go along with that. But at least gives us that ability to be able to do those things now inside the building with small groups of people. The next phase in the TAS is phase 2, and what that would allow us to do is to begin worship in the courtyard. I know a lot of folks are saying, when can we start worshiping outside? Well, according to the document, we need to see, now that we're in phase 1, we need to see an additional 21 days of downward trends in new infections in the state and in the region. And the document lays it out in more detail, but that's basically it. 21 days of downward trend, and then we can consider, council can consider moving us into phase 2, which primarily gives us the ability to worship in the courtyard, distance and with precautions and all of those kinds of things. So we're going to kind of watch the trends these next 3 weeks. We're going to see what happens, remain hopeful. And actually, you know, as that happens, that could work out well with construction. As you saw in some of those pictures, you know, there's still rock laying across the courtyard. There's still fencing and scaffolding. In 3 weeks, that will likely be gone. So if we were fortunate and the trends continue downward and we were able to look at that for early July, it could be possible. And at that time, it would actually line up with construction pretty well as well. Phase 3, a summary of phase 3. Basically, what phase 3 says is that we are able at that point to begin worshiping indoors, but with less than 75 people in the sanctuary in order that we could keep people spaced out and that we could observe distancing guidelines from the CDC and all of the other pieces that we would need to think about in order to have people in the building. Outside of worship, it also allows the ability to bring in small groups of less than 10 people to meet or to do small group gatherings, ministries of those types in the building. In order for us to get to phase 3, we would have to see an additional 28 days of declining new infection trends after we land in phase 2. So it's basically another month of downward trends before we're ready to move to phase 3. And finally, phase 4 is a return to full capacity in-person worship and in-person programming. And like phase 3, phase 4 would need to see an additional 28 days of downward trends after we landed in phase 3. So it really is a stair-step plan to move kind of into one after another as trends allow us to do. You know, the virus is going to determine how quickly all of this happens. And I know that's one of the biggest questions we all have is when? When are these things going to happen? Well, we don't know for sure. The virus will decide that for us, but at least we have a pathway and can see what are the marks that we need to see in order for us to consider moving into each new step.
Yeah, I've really appreciated the council and their leadership, and you, Pastor Dan, because I mean you do a lot of this work. But yeah, the considerations and the thoughtfulness about how to keep people safe and what does that mean for all of us, and taking steps. You know, it's just not like, okay, we're going to be normal again. It's
yeah. When I think for me, one of the hard parts in working through all this with the council and spending a lot of time with all of the information coming from our public health and the CDC and the White House and epidemiologists in the state of Iowa. I was on a great conference call with an epidemiologist in Fort Dodge who talked about some of the specific challenges of churches. And in all of that, I think some of what I went through was recognizing, man, even when we get back to being together in person, it's going to be different for a while. As much as I hate to accept that, you know, to be in worship and to see everybody else in masks, or to not be able to shake hands, or to be within 6 feet of people, and to think about how do we keep the restrooms clean, and how do we even hand out bulletins. All of that is just, it's really hard at times to think about. But again, these are the things that with the information we have right now, we know are important, because the last thing we want to do is to create suffering, or even worse, for people because they came to church. You know, as important as it is, and as hard as it is for us right now not be together in person, that remains our top priority, and that just has to be. I'm just so grateful that in the midst of it, you know, we're able to do what we've been doing in terms of video streaming. We've been able to connect with not only our own people, but people far beyond our walls through worship and through devotional pieces that are being put out online. We have small groups and support groups that have formed online, and that we've managed to really pivot pretty quickly in a lot of ways. It's not the same, but ministry does go on, and I think that's what we have to keep working at, because we don't have a lot of other choices, you know.
I think for me, it was someone in the council who had said that they don't want us to come together and sit and judge one another, and just realizing that, you know, so many of us are in different places with our comfort level, you know, that there's folks that don't, you know, they're comfortable being without a mask, they're comfortable being around other people and even some of that physical contact, but there's others who just aren't. And I keep picturing someone who comes, you know, and is not that comfortable, but wants to be in church, and they even set their chair down in the courtyard. And then someone who is comfortable, who is their friend, comes over and sits down next to them. And now the person is stuck, you know, with this idea that, do I get up and move because I'm uncomfortable? What's my friend going to think of that? Do I sit and kind of quietly stew about this? Now I'm not in worship. And I think there's the complexity, and there's so much to think about as we've done this. And I think working with the staff and with the council has been really a blessing, because we just kind of the more minds and the more ways of thinking about this, it's I think been very helpful to, you know, get people's perspective that I'm not always aware of. So
yeah, you know, the other beautiful thing I think about the way this has been put together is there's great flexibility in it too. As we continue to learn more about the virus, as we continue to get new information from our experts and the public health folks that are helping guide us, you know, we have the capacity to be able to reassess and to look. And I think that's a really important piece, that this document's meant to guide us, to be a tool to help us, because it's so complex and those decisions are so hard.
Yeah, it is. It's so complex, and yet I think we've just made such beautiful progress as a congregation of enjoying hanging out with one another and being together. Look at that gathering space. It's the culture of Trinity now, is that we like to be with one another, and we aren't sitting and standing or in judgment of one another, but making some connections. And it's been really beautiful to see over these last 15 years. And so now all of a sudden we're kind of struggling to navigate a whole new way, but not lose that culture of enjoying being together.
Yeah, isn't it amazing, the timing of our building project with all of this? One of the big goals of the building project was to create more space for people to be able to physically connect after worship. And just imagine now, with what we know about physical distancing, if we had to do that in our hallway and in our old entrance, how tight we have to stand to one another, and how much more space we have to be able to stand apart. That's going to be, I think, a really unexpected gift in the next couple of years as we adapt to some of these issues, thinking about these in the coming years.
Yeah, the timing has been amazing, for the live streaming, to think that we had all of the equipment, our cameras, the computers, all the stuff that we need in place, and that we were ready to start doing this, 3 weeks later, and to squeeze that up. And as I shared with you guys earlier this week, that I'm hearing stories from people literally around the state that go to other churches that are going, oh yeah, we watched Trinity on Sunday morning because we've got kind of the full service, and it was just sheer, luck or the work of the Spirit that we had that in place and ready to go. Otherwise, we would be doing, an iPhone and one pastor, and it wouldn't be nearly as good as it was. But that's been 2 years of putting stuff in place and getting things ready, and wow, we're very fortunate.
And some of the people, right? Some of the members that have the talent to help us, the Friends, Lucas and Colleen, and just what they brought. Yeah, I agree. The timing's been really amazing.
Yeah, we are definitely blessed in the midst of all of the changes that have gone on. So, and like you say, we're continuing to explore ministry and new kinds of ministries in this new environment, which leads me to say one more thing that I wanted to throw out there to everybody who may be joining us here. We're Coffee with Pastors is we're thinking about Bible study, right? One of the things we've enjoyed doing is the Wednesday morning men and women's Bible study, where we get to connect with them and talk about the texts that are coming up for Sunday and preaching on them. And so one of the things we're thinking about doing is doing that over Zoom. So I just want to encourage anybody who's interested in Bible study to pass that word. Give a call to the office or email one of the pastors here if you're interested in a Zoom Bible study, because that might be something that, as the guru of technology, that I'll be putting that together. Because I am seriously thinking, okay, how can we connect over the internet in some different ways with different topics, book studies maybe. I'm hoping maybe to get a grief online support group going. So, but right now we're going to start with the Bible study, right? And see if there's some interest around that. Anything else we should talk about with these folks here that Coffee with a Pastor?
One other thing, and this is probably more for the folks that are a little bit clued into the larger church and what goes on in the larger expressions of the church. But in the Northeast Iowa Synod, the synod that we're a part of, we have a Synod Assembly every summer where we do kind of the business of the church. And that event has been postponed from this summer to next summer because of, again, the same kind of challenges of having people come together. What's significant about this particular Synod Assembly coming up is that we were supposed to elect a new bishop at this Synod Assembly. And our current bishop, Bishop Ollisett, has been serving for well over 20 years. He's been in that role as long as almost any bishop in the LCA, and he's now set to retire. What the Synod Council has decided to do is postpone the assembly for next year and do the bishop's election next year, next summer at that assembly, but to call an interim bishop for this coming year. And so again, just for the folks, I know we have a number of folks at Trinity that really are keyed in and pay attention to the larger church, because that's who we are as a congregation. I just think that's significant to let people know too.
Yeah, that's, new beginnings all over the place, right? Oh, yeah.
Well, it's 10:30. Normally at this time, Kathy, you get up and you stand up at Fellowship Coffee and walk to the front to get the speaking.
I'm moving close here.
Wrap it up.
Wrapping it up. So, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining me for Coffee with the Pastors. I'll just leave everybody maybe with a couple of verses to think about. When I think about change, and one of my favorite passages of scripture that I often use with folks when we're gathering before a funeral service is Psalm 46. Which says, God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. And I just love those verses, because it talks about when it feels as though the world has been turned upside down. And there's a part of this time that just feels like there's so much change, there's so much uncertainty, but the psalmist tells us in those times that God is our refuge, God is our strength, God is the one that we can go to in the midst of it. And then one of my favorite verses is later on, verse 10, which says, be still and know that I am God. And I have certainly found in my personal practice that's a big piece of this time too, that just it's stop, it's listen, it's know that I'm God. And all of the distractions, all of the other stuff in the midst of the crazy, it's bringing me back to what's most important, which is knowing that God is God and God will see us through it all. So anyway, thank you for being such a great pastors to be doing this kind of work with, and the kind of leadership that both of you provide. And thank you to everybody who joined us for coffee. So my coffee is cold, I need another cup. And so thanks very much for Coffee with the Pastors, and blessings to everybody.